Welcome to a review of the Davis Vantage Vue Precision Weather Station, available from davisnet.com. Now we're going to do a full review of both parts of this weather station for you, but in the first section we just want to concentrate on the packaging and the main features. So packaging, it arrived in a very neat box there, some very nicely moulded cardboard packaging inside and individually plastic wrapped parts. Really made it very sturdy, and it arrived to us in perfect condition. So let's just run you down some of those features, the key features that perhaps set this Davis Vantage Vue station apart from some of the others on the market. So for us, one of the biggest draws is the fact that it has very quick updates of 2.5 seconds. Another one is that in fact it has a long transmission of around 1,000 feet, which is around about 300 meters. So for most of us that's going to be perfectly adequate, and there is another option where you can use one of the consoles as a retransmitting station should that distance be a little bit further. Okay, so on to some of the actual key features of the console itself and the instrument suites. As you can see, that's the white one on the right hand side. It's solar powered, which is great. It has a little battery as well inside there, which is obviously a backup in case of cloud conditions or nighttime. It's wireless. We have an anemometer, that's the wind speed device. A rain collector. We have a weatherproof cover, that's part of the plastic there, should be resistant to wear and tear. We have temperature and humidity sensors. There's a built-in spirit level bubble on top there, so you can really sight it to the optimum conditions. On the console itself, we're able to view current conditions, moon phases. We have a 12-hour forecast. There's wind speed, which is viewable, and various graphs. We can also look at the weather this time yesterday, as well as a whole multitude of alarms that could be set for all of the conditions. It retransmits to extend the range. We have a sunrise-sunset feature as well. The barometer, which measures the air pressure. We have rain. We also have temperature and humidity inside and outside. And then the controls obviously on the display there can be backlit as well. There's a weather centre which shows you various conditions for each of the individual aspects of the weather. And finally some astronomical data, which is looking at things like meteor showers and seasonal changes. Okay, so in part 2 we're going to go into more detail looking at the console individually and the ISS unit on the right. Welcome back. So now let's have a look at the console in a bit more detail. As you can see, it's a nicely compact unit which can be placed either on a desktop or wall mounted should you prefer. There is a clip-on base supplied as well, which will enable you to do that. Then you have the aerial here as well on the side, which can be spun around for optimum placement. Now this is mains power, but it also has a battery backup feature, so you want to get yourself some batteries installed in the unit, that is fine. We've got it plugged up just to the mains only at this stage, so therefore that's why we've got this low console batteries message flashing up. If we spin the unit around, on the reverse you'll notice that it also has a built-in feature for a weather data logger, and we're going to be reviewing a data logger for this unit separately. If we unclip the battery panel, you can see there that the data logger fits inside that port and very snugly and neatly kept out of the way. Okay, and this in front of us is the Integrated Sensor Suite, or ISS, and this is the part of the weather station that goes outside. As you can see, we've mounted it here, but that equipment does come with the set, apart from the pole itself. So what are the main features of the ISS? Okay, well, we've got the wind speed, which is from the cups on top of the unit there. We've got the wind direction, which is from the arrow pointer underneath, which spins around a full 360. We have rainfall, that is measured via a collecting funnel which goes into a cup, and that tilts, and every time that tilts there's a signal sent through that a certain amount of rain has been measured. We have the outdoor temperature and humidity, and both of those are housed inside the white screen there on the bottom right hand side, and that's aimed to give a truer and more accurate reading there. So all of that is completely wireless, and there is a position underneath the unit for you to install the battery as backup. As we say, it is also solar powered as well, so during the daytime that's obviously going to be minimal drain on the batteries. Okay, so now we're going to look at some of the more detailed features of the console, right the way from the startup. So if we go ahead and turn the power on, you'll see the screen that you're first presented with. The unit goes through a series of beeps there to just test itself. And as you can see, there's nothing displayed during that period of time, but in a moment you're going to get all of the LCD panel displayed at once. There we go. And then the unit says basically thank you for choosing Davis, which is very nice. And as we've done that, that's now going to go into the main setup screen here. Okay. Now we won't go through every single feature of this, it takes a little while, but essentially you can set up things like your latitude and longitude, your time zones, time and date. You can set different ISSs to receive those if you have more than one, and there's lots of other features you can do there. So we're going to go ahead and set this unit up, and we'll join you again when it's all displaying the weather data. Right, so now let's look at some of the main features of the LCD display on the console to begin with. So as you can see here, we've got the first of all the moon phase there. It's currently showing as a full moon. We have at the top the time and the date. This is our wind indicator rows here, where we have currently set at miles per hour. That can all be changed, of course, to different units. And you've got the different points of the compass there as well. And as you can see, it even does the ones in between. So we've got like north, northeast currently showing there. So if we move a bit over, we've now got inside and outside temperature displayed here on the first row, and the next row down is inside and outside humidity. Then we have barometric pressure, rainfall, dew point, which is calculated, which can also be changed actually and toggled to show wind chill. Then we have down the bottom here, this is the weather centre with additional information. And we've got the graph of the selected variable as well on the left. You'll notice that this little antenna signal is flashing every now and then. That is just to show active transmission is occurring. And there's a little forecast icon which will appear here for a weather forecast. The station hasn't been turned on long enough for that to happen, and it accumulates data from the surroundings in order to process that forecast. So we'll expect that to come up in the next couple of hours. Right, so now we're going to look at the individual elements of weather that this station can measure. So you may be doing this in darker conditions, in which case let's just show you what that's like now. It's a bit of a dim display there, but not too bad currently. But of course if you press the light, that is illuminating it very well indeed. The decals on the fronts of these buttons are also glow in the dark, so that does really help as well. Okay, let's turn the lighting back on. So first thing we're going to look at is the temperature. The unit is recording both outside and inside temperature, as you can see at the top here, and they're currently set at 20 degrees C. It's measuring inside and 2 degrees C outside. You can of course change those units to Fahrenheit as well. And if we press the temperature button, then you can see it's toggling between the inside and outside temperatures there as well. Okay, so temperature is fairly self-explanatory. If we move on to humidity as well, let's press the humidity button there, and again we've got the inside humidity and the outside humidity currently being measured as well, and pressing the humidity button also scrolls between the two. The next function is the wind, so if we press the wind button now, that takes us over, the arrow moves across to wind, and as you can see there's some current conditions being measured for wind speed there on the device. You'll notice that we've got the wind rows here currently set to measure in miles per hour. Again, you can change that between knots, meters per second or kilometers per hour. And you'll notice that there's a changing little pointers at the top here. Basically you have a solid black pointer which is currently east here. That is the current wind direction. Then you have a larger unfilled pointer which is telling us the dominant wind direction for a 10-minute period within the last hour. If the dominant wind direction varies, then there are up to 6 different arrows might be shown on that display, so you can get an idea of how the wind is shifting. Right, so the wind itself, if we press the wind button again, you can change between different wind speeds over the last few hours and various other features there, which we'll come on to with the WX sensor in just a moment. Now if we've gone on to rainfall, press the rain button. You'll notice it's telling us the rain rate at the moment is 0.0, and we've got it set to the daily amount on there, the daily total for rain. If we press rain again, it tells us the monthly, and again the yearly total one more time takes us to the live rain rate in millimeters per hour. You can of course change that to inches as well. And finally, if we press the barometer button there, that tells us that there is no trend in the barometric pressure yet. Again, the unit hasn't been set up that long, but if we leave that for a few hours, that will become evident. Currently set at measuring 983.3 millibars, you can also change the unit there to hectopascals and other settings as well for air pressure. You can also adjust the barometer so that it is measuring for your altitude and your current location, and you can set that up. So for example, we are at 80 meters here, so if we set that, that's going to take into account that our height difference is going to have an impact on the barometric air pressure reading. Right, we're going to come back in a minute and we're going to look through some real detail now with the WX center button for each of those different elements. Just before we look at the WX center button for each of the elements, I just want to draw your attention to the fact there are 3 other readings that are calculated by the unit that we can in fact view. The first is the heat index. So if we press the second function button and temperature, then that brings up the current heat index being measured, being calculated. If we do similarly for the second and the humidity button, that takes us onto the dew point, which is currently calculated. And finally, if we do it again with the second button and the wind, then it tells us the current wind chill that is being calculated by the unit. Okay, so pressing the WXCEN button there brings us to the weather center portion of the display here, which changes for each of the different elements that we are measuring. So let's start off with temperature. If we go to temperature and we press the WXCEN button, and then it tells us the temperature out change in 24 hours, the temperature change per hour, and we've got the temperature out maximum in the last 25 days, the minimum in the last 25 days, and then back to temperature out max again. Similarly, if we go to humidity, we press the WXCEN button, then this one scrolls between the minimum and the max out. You can also do it for wind speed. If we go to wind speed, currently we are showing the Beaufort scale for wind speed there. Beaufort scale 2 is equal to light air. So if we press that one again, it tells us the wind direction, the maximum wind speed. We have the last 10-minute gust and the direction. The average speeds, 2-minute and 10-minute average. That's quite nice to see both. And back to the Beaufort scale again. If we go to rain, then we press the WX button again. It tells us the rain in the last 15 minutes, the last 24 hours, the daily rain, the last rainstorm that occurred, and rain in the last 7 days, as well as the rain rate max there as well. So that's quite a nice feature for rain. And then finally, barometric pressure. We do the same. There's no trend yet. No change in 24 hours yet recorded by the device. We have a barometric pressure maximum and the minimum. The altimeter settings, as you can see, we can change that, and the absolute pressure is the pressure being recorded right now by the device. Okay, so that's quite a nice feature there for each individual element of weather there. Lots more in-depth detailed information that you can see. So now we look at graphs. So again, each of the individual elements of weather, let's go back to temperature, we can show graphically on this display on the bottom left of the console. We press the graph button, and it brings us up with a graph for the last 25 hours of temperature. Now our console hasn't been on that long, so we've only got a couple of readings there, but in fact if you scroll between those, you can change it so it's last 25 days, which is even further out, last 25 months even further, and then a beep tells you you've gone too far there. So if we go back the way, then we can see between 25 hours and 25 months worth of temperature data. Going along to humidity, similarly we can see I believe up to 25 hours out as well. Yes, you can. And for the wind speed, you can do 25 hours out, but you can also do it in 25 days, 25 months again. And similarly, if you come back the way, you can go for the last 4 hours and 25 latest speeds, which shows you the graph updating quite rapidly there. And this is where the very quick data transmission rate comes in. Of every 2.5 seconds, that updates the wind speed. And finally, barometric pressure as well. Last 25 hours, we can see up to the last 25 months similarly, and going right the way back the way, then 25 hours is the absolute minimum that we can view on that graph. The high-low button is a useful feature for viewing the maximum and minimum measurements made for each of the elements of weather on your station. So one press will bring up the daily highs there for each of the conditions. Another press brings up the daily lows. A third press brings up the highs for the particular month. Obviously we're in March at the moment. Another press brings up the lows. A fifth press there brings up the yearly highs, and then one more press brings up the yearly lows for that station. So you can keep an eye on how the extreme conditions have been in your particular station there. When you're finished, simply press the done button. Another useful feature of the console is the ability to set alarms for each of the individual elements. To do that is really quite straightforward. You press the second button, and there where it says WXCEN, you'll notice there's the word alarm underneath, so press that. It goes in, and as you can see there are no alarms set currently. So that's for all the high alarms for each condition, but you can also press the high-low button to change it for low alarms. For example, temperature outside, to warn you that there are frosty conditions, say below 0 for example. Okay, so pressing high again brings you back to the high. We're going to set a high alarm for you just to show you how that's done, and we're going to set it for outside temperature. You can of course scroll with the arrow buttons between each of the different elements there to change. So we'll go back to outside temperature, and to set the alarm, press the second button and then press on the one that says graph and the word set underneath. As you can see, it's got a flashing number, so to change that just press plus or minus until you get to your desired temperature. Let's say it's something above 9 degrees, then you can scroll along to the next digit and continue to adjust that until you get to, for example, 29 degrees C. Once you've got that set, then press the done button and that alarm is now locked in. So you can set that for a variety of the different elements there, and once you've completed setting those alarms, press the done button and they are ready to go. It will alert you with an audible beep, and within the settings you can actually change the pitch of that beep as well, so it's perhaps a little bit less irritating or grating depending on your preference. So in the next set of videos we're going to look at the connectivity of the console, how you can get it linked up to your PC for logging data on some weather software, or indeed uploading straight onto the internet. And there are a couple of loggers available that can do that for you. There's the USB version, there's even a serial version, and there's an IP version as well, and we'll look at the IP version in our future video. So overall, our first impressions of the Vantage Vue from Davis have been very favourable. The setup was really easy and straightforward, and the refresh rate of the data I think is one of the biggest and most impressive features of the whole unit, and really makes it stand out from the rest. You've also got that combined with the fact that it's got a very large transmission data range. I think you've got something that is really worth considering purchasing. They've got a great brand name there, and they're very, very highly recommended from PubSheds.